Greetings! It is I, Tantus Van Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome. It is time to continue my discussion on the various campaign settings of Dungeons & Dragons dating back from AD&D beyond, and of course, we began with Spelljammer, the Dungeons & Dragons Adventures in Space, which started back in AD&D. But let's continue talking about it now. Let's talk about having a Spelljammer campaign. The thing about a Spelljammer campaign, it has challenges far beyond what a normal campaign has. In a normal campaign, your players may only have to explore a single world. We're opening it up to space. Space is vast. There are hundreds of worlds, hundreds of crystal spheres. Your sky is the limit beyond your imagination. You could have your players exploring a single crystal sphere. You could have them explore dozens over the course of a campaign. So as your players are going to find a much larger world than they could have ever imagined in a normal Dungeons & Dragons campaign, for you, it has its own challenges from the vastness of space and developing it and making it feel like it's a place that isn't completely empty. You want it to feel alive while still feeling vast. A very challenge in and of itself. But I'm here today to help break some things down that's going to assist you along the way. Some big questions. So the first of the many questions we're going to ask is groundling characters, spacefaring characters. Now, for groundling characters, they have a unique advantage, is that the characters, when they are discovering something within space, it's basically being introduced to them at that point in time. So it's not just characters, but players that might be discovering this. It's a very good way for introductory adventures to Spelljammer to be groundling. That they're going to go out into space and have this wonder level to them when they're exploring it. They're going to want to check out all these different things, different planets, go to these places. The drawback is that groundling characters are not going to have the same experience as a spacefaring crew when it comes to some of the dangers that they will face. They won't recognize certain dangers, and they might get in trouble as a result of this. The fact is also, certain proficiencies that exist within Spelljammer might not have existed on that groundling planet. They're not going to be able to learn those until they've been in space for a while and experienced things. A way to mitigate some of these problems is to possibly have a mentor-type NPC with them. This can be some kind of friend, again, a mentor, something that could help introduce them to some of the dangers and lead them into space. And this can also be a good way of helping you move the adventure along in certain directions as you want to, as it goes. Space is vast. You never know what direction your players are really going to go. If you have some kind of in with them, i.e. an NPC, you could easily push them in a direction that might work for you a little better, especially if it's someone that's more experienced than them that they might be willing to listen to and learn from. So as you can see, groundling characters have both their advantages and disadvantages. On the other hand, we have spacefaring characters. Spacefaring characters, they're easy to run. They know space. So the thing is, this is better for more advanced players. You shouldn't have a beginner necessarily be a spacefarer to begin with. And space is dangerous. So usually when you're using a spacefaring campaign, I would suggest you start at 6th level, at least. The thing is, that might work the same for the groundling characters, but because space, again, it's dangerous. But usually if you have a mentor character, maybe someone that's much higher level, you could mitigate some of those factors of level when it comes to groundlings. Spacefarers, you have no excuse. The fact is, if they're going out in space, they should have known the dangers to begin with. They're going to have all those proficiencies. They're going to have skills that should they face dangers that those groundlings on the other side are going to face, they're going to overcome them. On the other hand, they're probably less inclined to get involved with groundling politics. If you're having a pure spelljamming, spacefaring campaign, that's fine. But if you're thinking of involving planets, you need a great excuse. The players themselves, because they're playing spacefarers, normally don't have a reason to go down to that planet. Groundlings, they'll be up to exploring it. So you can see there's differences in the nature of the campaign you're running also that make a difference as to why you may or may not want your characters to be groundling and spacefarers. Advantages and disadvantages to both. You have to think of this carefully. Second one you're going to have to think about. Second big topic is I'm going to use one crystal sphere or many. Now, one crystal sphere has a lot of potential to it, has maybe months or years of campaigning of potential. There are many planets in there, many places that you can exist in. If you make up your own, or if you use a pre-existing one, they oftentimes have maybe even half a dozen to a dozen planets and other various places that you can visit. And you can make up adventures involving them very easily. A single sphere, it's easy to build. Easier to build. So that's your advantage of it, is you don't have to build as much to your universe. You've made your universe one bubble. And depending on the adventure you're running, you might only need that one bubble. But oftentimes, especially longer campaigns, this is going to shrink. It's going to be explored, this one sphere. And you're going to need to look at having multiple spheres. Multiple spheres is great for much longer campaigns or certain campaigns where your players need to visit all these different places. It can make sense, but those involve more work on your end. There is another difference between it. Space has travel time in between it. When you're in a normal sphere, the travel time can be pretty daunting. Could be maybe like months even between one side of the sphere to another. You can oftentimes excuse this a lot better than the travel between spheres themselves, which could be months or years sometimes between certain spheres. The distances can be daunting in the exploration that you'll need to do. It means that you have to think about what you're going to be doing in all that downtime. It's a lot easier to excuse downtime on single sphere areas than to not. You're not going to want to glaze over it, maybe just a die roll. That's not fun. You want to have something there that represents that travel. On the other end, you don't want to go too far and obsess over what's going on, because that detracts from the overall adventure. You want just enough of that in-between spheres or in-between locations to balance it out. And as I said, single sphere is a lot easier for that. So you have advantages in a single sphere. But again, it's depending on the kind of adventure you have. If I have a 4-session adventure planned, I'm probably only going to need a single sphere. If I'm having one that's going to span years of gameplay, probably going to need multiple. Now the last question, of course, is between short adventures and long adventures. What do you want to do? A short adventure is a single quest. It's a single goal that your characters might have. This doesn't mean it's the end of the characters that you're playing. You could have sequels to this. We have a single adventure. It resolves itself. Then, possibly these same characters come in for a sequel adventure. It could be another short one. And you could have a series of short adventures that would add up to something long, but each of them is their own separate stories with the same characters. Effectively, the characters are going like different novels almost. Think about that each novel has the same characters but doing different adventures. That's what it effectively will be. It's easier to make a short adventure, truthfully speaking. But it doesn't have as grandiose things going on. Goals aren't as big. They're usually smaller goals. When you're going to a long-term adventure, oftentimes you have much grander goals in mind. Much grander things that you're thinking of and planning out. So, that's it for today, though. I talked about building your own campaign setting in Spelljammer. It's a daunting task. It's difficult because you're building more than a single planet. When you're building a normal campaign, you might only need a kingdom. You might even need a continent. You might need that world at very most. In Spelljammer, you'll need planets, star systems, an entire universe. You might need it. So you can see how daunting a task this is, how large. But we ask some important questions. First off, characters are groundling, or are they spacefarers? This narrows down how you're going to plan things very well. Second, I asked, of course, one sphere? Multiple spheres. Again, you can see how one is technically easier than the other, but one allows for different opportunities than other. This is a much smaller universe for your characters to this one. Characters are probably going to have more excitement on that end, so it's a balancing of what you want for your game. And I started talking about the differences between short and long campaigns. I dived deeply into short campaigns, and I started touching on long campaigns, but I'm really going to finish up talking about what a long campaign is next time. And then we'll dive into some of the themes that are going to be very important for you to have if you're having a Spelljammer campaign. You want to integrate these themes into it as much as possible to give that essence of the game, essence of Spelljammer that you're really going to want. But if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, anything you think I left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows support the channel, the empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon, link in the description below. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.